Okay, let's try this again, interrupted by phone calls. Hi, Sam here, Relove Guitars, and we've got on the bench a part exchange that I took in, Rally semi-hollow guitar, Chinese made under a Korean company or Korean owned company. Rallys I've had a lot of and I like them, they're very good. The Les Paul style guitars are particularly good. Other styles are competent, not quite as surprisingly good as the Les Paul the ones are, but they're still great guitars for not a lot of money. Now I've got this one here, and I've had a bit of a dilemma with this because I'm always tempted to improve on something. I'm not very good at just sort of turning things around and selling them on. The problem with this guitar is I don't need this guitar in my life. It's a two-humbucker thing, which I've got enough of to work with for what I need to do. So I can't justify keeping it. Possibly might have done if it had been a Les Paul, but it isn't. So I've just been kind of thinking through what I put different pickups on it, and there were different options and stuff. And actually, coming to think of it, I've had to be a bit sort of, not hard-nosed exactly, but a little bit disciplined in that I can't really afford to do too much playing around with this one. It's got to be a move on and ship out sort of thing. Now within that, of course, I'm keen to make it the best it can be with what we've got, but even with this one I'm not really looking to change anything out unless it's absolutely necessary. The one thing about this guitar that isn't perfect for my liking is the slight neck heaviness, and I've been trying to think of ways to overcome this stroke improve this, and there's a real difficulty here in that basically there's a block down the center here, stops around about here, then there's a gap around the back and some degree of hollow space in here. The wiring's very tidy, it's all neatly hidden away, but the problem is it would be very difficult to fit any or attach any weights of any kind under here without things moving around. So actually addressing the balance on this is going to be quite difficult. Now, you know, a couple of thoughts I had was, well, could I switch out with a set of lighter tuners, which actually are in keeping with the style, so that could be one way of doing it. A second one would be, you know, think of different ways I could fit something to here. A third one would be, is there a way that I could create a strap button that comes out a bit further along here to kind of push the pivot point a bit further? And I've been thinking about that, and I'm not necessarily going to do it here, but let's have a quick look-see. Okay, hold on. Always got a couple of shelves too few on this in this shed. So what I had an idea of was, I wondered, was there any way of you know, extending out a strap button in it that was a usable strap button. Now, you know, if you're going to extend it out, you're going to need to figure out some sort of bar or threaded insert that goes into the body, and then a rod that comes out from that with then some sort of strap button type arrangement on the end. And of course, strap button, to make a strap button on the end of something would be a bit unusual, because obviously it might be that you could have a thread inside another one of these, and that you could get that into an insert and then thread this strap button onto the inside of that. I guess the problem with that is you'd have to build some kind of fixed washer there to stop the strap moving back down on there. So that's kind of difficult. But that was my initial plan, or attempt. And then apart from that is, how would we get some extra weight into here? And the question, I suppose, is what sort of extra weight would we need on there? And that's one thing that you can't really know until you go ahead and do some experiments with it. So I thought that maybe what would be worth doing is try to find some weight to attach to here. Now, of course, typically, as luck would have it, I've actually gone and used up most of my lead on something else just now. In fact, I stuck it into the Tenson guitar because it was so light as well. In fact, it was way too light, the neck was too heavy on it. So I've used up the lead. So I would have to buy some more lead for this, which I don't mind doing, but the question would be is, how would I attach it into here? Now, you could sort of try with some Velcro and stick the lead to the Velcro, but the problem with that is it almost certainly would drop off at some point and you'd have a very large thing rattling around in here. An alternative might be to, you could gloop in some resin onto this side of the block here and press a couple of large bits of lead onto that resin and let it set in this position, and that actually might work. Difficult to do it on that side because you've got the electrics. Again, you could put the lead down a curved strip, quite a long curved strip that you could possibly get in this way, but it'd be quite difficult. Question is how do you work out what you need to do with it? Because frankly, I don't have the answer to that. What I also don't know is what the cumulative weight difference is between these tuners and the ones on there. So what I think I'll do is, along the way of doing the basic setup, well, I say basic, doing my setup on this guitar, what I think I'll do is when I get the strings off, I'll take the tuners off and I'll put them both on kitchen scales, accurate kitchen scales, and we'll, oh hello Morris, what do you think? We'll come and we'll make an assessment of just how much weight difference there is, because I don't have any formula to use to work out how to get a balance. The only thing you can really do is put a piece of string on it, hang it up on a pivot point and watch it tip, but that's not even the same as having it around your shoulders. So it's a tricky one. Some guitars with cavities are easy enough to fill out with lead and lead shot and other things that people use, but it always feels bad to be trying to recover something that should have been designed better, and there are a few guitars that do this. Take your bum out of the camera here. Namely, you know, SGs, as we all know. Okay, so Morris, I don't want you getting more blurs on the camera. We've already been through that with the other camera. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get clear about the action on this thing. I'm not even going to change the nut. Interestingly, I've played this guitar a bit and the tuning is really stable, so there's no issue with the nut, and frankly, because this is going to go out at a lowish price anyway, just to, as much as possible, get my money back plus a little bit more for the setup. What I don't want is I don't want to have to put too much time in, which is just costing too much time. So one of the things I learned the hard way is when you're going to do adjustments on a customer's guitar or a guitar you want to sell, it's a bit of a academic here because it's already been scuffed a little bit, but what I like to do is I like to put a bit of Gorilla tape on my chunky screwdriver. Morris, come down now please. I want to sit by the fire. There's a good boy. So that when you come to do any big turns and adjustments, you can start by having it shielded a bit so you don't run so much risk of scuffing up the thing. Now obviously it's got to be able to adjust, so you have to press down and you know, to get it to adjust. Now I'm not sure that whether or not this is already, in fact it is already close to being on the deck, so we may be at the optimum or the best possible string action anyway on this. So let's just have a quick skip back and check through. So we've got practically no relief at all. There is a tiny bit because you can hear the string clicking, but there's virtually none. But as I say, I've played it and that isn't, there's no problem with that, so I'm not going to fix it if it ain't broke. And that's the principle on this guitar. It's a part exchanger. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we've got last fret action of just over 1.5, which isn't bad, and a first fret action of a little more than that, over 1.5. So technically I would ideally want this one lower. Now if it's already at its stops, which it is, I've got no options here with this guitar other than to take down a little bit the underside of this bridge to get a better playing action. So basically I'm going to have to come back to that. So just have a look at the other end. We've got fairly good first fret action too, so everything about this is good so far, which really helps in that if it ain't broke don't fix it kind of principle. Now I've got to find a place for all this stuff because I haven't got enough room in here, keeping things I don't use. Okay, so a quick sort of summary. We're close to a good playing action, a little bit high on this side. So I'm going to need to take down some of that bridge to make it improve. The nut's working fine. The first fret action is the right size. So actually, what I need to do is get it in tune, and then we will go from there. Okay, so as it stands, that is playing pretty well. Now, the next question is are there any notes that are choked off? Now this is interesting because so far, I haven't done the last string, but you can see that everything I've played so far is playing well. Now that may change if I take a bit of material off this bridge and lower it slightly, which I'm going to need to do. And so I can't really ascertain whether there are any frets that are going to interfere with a slightly lower action until I can get that lower action. So the slightly annoying part about that is I'm going to have to take the strings right off first, which is a different order than I prefer to do it normally. So I'm going to hoik all the strings off, and we're going to get them right out from the bridge, and we're going to have a look at the underside of the bridge and see if we can make any reduction, so we get just that extra millimetre back of the action. You know, because the thing about this is that while we don't have to do extensive work to it, I want it to play at the best possible action, and we're currently constrained by the bridge, which I don't like on principle. You know, it really shouldn't be stuck at 2.5 millimetres or 2 millimetres on the first fret action, just because the bridge can't do any better. Okay, so I've got all these little ends of strings biting into carpet and stuff. So a bit of basic bridge this. I'm kind of interested to know whether or not this baby would work in its place, and actually it's a little bit intolerant of the spacing, which is a shame, but it's an American copy of the Tone Pros bridge, which I quite like, but I'll end up probably using that on a fresh build. So this is obviously made, it works fine with this, so let's have a look. We are kind of as low as we can go. There's no further downward movement we go. We can't hammer the posts in any further. They are at their best possible setting. So the only options we've got now are to look at the underside of the bridge and say, okay, of this, can we remove some of this material so the whole thing sits a little bit lower on those posts? And I think we absolutely can. It'll make a raw metal cut, if you like, or scrape on the underside of there, but it's invisible, it'll be hidden, so the bottom line is we'll get the action we want. Now, in order to turn this off, in order to make this work, we're going to have to straighten out the strings, which is a complete faff when it comes to it, but otherwise they just catch on everything and you don't get them, you aren't able to pull them out through the bridge very easily. So they should last long enough to allow us to do any fret leveling. So it's a funny one, the old part exchange thing, from a business point of view, because you know, some people, you know, quite understandably, a lot of people are interested in doing part X's and will offer you such when they want to buy something, or and trade out for something value, equal value. But the problem with this, and I think before I was doing this as a business, I would never have fully understood either. So I used to find that I used to have the same, possibly the same feeling as many of you might have had, where somebody offers you a trade-in value on something, and you almost feel insulted because it's so low. So let's take this this rally. This rally has a second-hand value of at most £150, maybe a little bit more, maybe 180 if I set it up and people know my work and they can see the video and whatever. But it's not a huge amount. So when taking this as a part exchange, I can't actually even make a profit on the trade. Now most people, so basically I gave a trade-in value of £100 against this. And the reason I did was because my customer who traded it in with me is a good customer of mine and has bought several things and brought things for servicing, for setup. So, it's in my interest to help to enable him to buy the other thing he wanted in the trade-in. So I gave a value of £100 against this. But from a business point of view, it immediately represents risk, and that's what a business owner is faced with when you ask them to do a trade-in. So they kind of think, wow, so okay, instead of £100 cash, what I'll get is a guitar that'll be sitting on my wall, and or somebody may or may not want it, in which case that money, even if I get the full value back, or the £100 value on it, even if I can get that back, it may sit on the wall for months before that happens. So it's a kind of a cash flow issue. You tie up money into things on walls, which, since you were selling things on walls that you had for sale, you're getting rid of one out the door and then finding yourself with some value tied up in another one. So it's not good business sense, really. And so actually it's why most guitar fixers and dealers and sellers and stuff offer very relatively what seem like very low trade-in values against new purchases, because of the amount of risk that's involved in basically the tie-up in cash flow. So to you, it might represent a really nice guitar that you've always liked and you've enjoyed since you had it, whatever, and you might remember, most people remember they paid X amount, 150 for it, let's say, in the case of this. And so to them it's £150 worth, and it feels like £150 worth of currency walking around with them. But in fact, obviously to someone like me, it's anything but, because of the degrees of risks involved. So like I say, for a quick sale I might just get back the part exchange value, but that means I can't do anything to it, because any time spent like this right now is devaluing this object here. So now at the moment it's no longer, it's getting even harder to recoup, because the time spent on it is going up. So I'm either losing money and selling it for £100 just to get back the original value, or I'm going to do some work to improve it, in which case I've got to get back the original value in the part exchange plus the time, and that starts to put the price up. And I'm hopefully a very fair trader, such that unless I improve this to my own standards of satisfaction of how it plays and sounds, then I'm not going to be comfortable increasing putting the price up on it. So it's a very tricky situation. So it's really worth knowing a bit of this if and when you next time you offer something in trade to a dealer or a setter-upper or a tech or whatever, because it's what might seem to you as a slightly insulting offer in the part exchange is very, very pragmatic, because you immediately tie up cash, and I have to say, as the business mentors of the world around will tell you, cash in business is king. It's absolutely there's no good to you to have a pile of guitars on the wall that are all worth something if you can't convert them to cash. That's why Alex at Ace Guitars, for example, despite liking lots of different kinds of guitars, he has the discipline to only trade with big name brands. Now, he's not saying that other guitars don't play great. What he's doing as a business principle is he's never straying he's never putting his cash far from where it can be immediately converted back to cash money. So he'll never introduce the risk of putting it into an oddity or a less known guitar just because it might be wonderful and it might potentially fetch money in the future. He'll always go with what is effectively a readily tradable currency, and for him that's branded names like Fender and Gibson and a couple of others, things where you will pretty much always get the money back on it. So that's, you know, it's a really smart business move. I like to, obviously personally I like to have a bit more, you know, deal with a few more little things, but I don't tie up much money in guitars and like this, so I don't do a lot of trading in this way. Now let me just have a look at this. Right, so we've got to go a little bit either side, no wider than the U shape on this. So basically my job now will be to cut down the U-shaped part of this bridge by holding it in a vise and basically attacking it with a hacksaw, no, you know what I mean, a file. And it's pretty crude, but it's the only way it's going to work. Now don't forget, this is a $5 Chinese bridge, so it's not like we're doing a desecration to any fancy metalwork here, or nothing particularly wonderful. So for this purpose you don't have to be massively accurate, but you do have to be you do have to remove enough material for it to work. So you get yourself a file that you know will do the job, and you kind of look to balance it up as much as you can to begin with, and then you just get going. Now the thing always to do, which I forgot to do, is kick off with a measurement. Alright, so get your nice accurate, whatchamacallit, caliper thing, and we've got 7.3 thickness, should be pretty much the same on both sides. It's a bit, yeah, about the same. So we're going to want to go down to, let's take a millimetre to give us a little bit of extra travel for the bridge, or a little bit better action. So we want to take a millimetre off both sides of this. If you were in the mood, you could probably take it up to a sanding drum, maybe pull off some of this quicker. It's entirely up to you. I like to do it in a slightly controlled fashion by hand. I've got some Gorilla tape on these vice jaws at the moment, so just protect them a little bit so I don't take off too much, or I don't scratch them if I can help it. So again, it's cutting down to the whatever it is, copper underneath, and then we'll just measure as we go down. So hardly anywhere yet. It takes a while to do. So I'm going to go off camera, and we'll end up with two scraped undersides of here, but it'll allow the whole thing to sit a tiny bit lower. The only slight downside of doing that is it does allow a bit more tilt, but your bridge doesn't really care about that. It's already tilting, by the way, because the only way, if I can show you, the only way these bridges don't tilt is if they're perfectly fitted to the size of this post gap thing. So you have a certain pitch here, a certain height here, and for it not to move at all, that has to be exactly fitted. This already has a bit of play in it, and the posts are already slightly forward. So the bridge is already a bit like this, and we'll get it, because there's more play. If we thin this down, there will be some more play as well. But it's the only way you're going to get the action I'm after out of it. So I'll put this back in here, I'll switch off, put the radio on, and I'll come back when it's done. Okay, back on now. What have I done? I have worked down the underside of the bridge quite a bit, and I've cleaned up the paint, or the finish underneath, and I've made a couple of little clips that may or may not work, just to see if I can, what's the word I'm looking for, fill out the bridge and stop it moving. So what I would like for that to happen is you put this on here like this, and then you push these to the front. Let's try putting them on first. So like little circlips kind of, and then actually they're kind of good where they are, really. I can push them around to the front like that. There we go, there's one. So I've basically cut some washers, made little effectively circlips out of them, which I can push on the tops. There you go, they're just perfect size, and they'll prevent this thing, allow it to go down, and it's not obstructing the underside, so it's not undoing the lowering that I've just done, but it allows us to seat this thing as low as it can go now with the extra maybe nearly a millimetre taken off, and also it'll sort of stop it from tilting upwards, I should think. Let's just make sure it's down as far as it'll go. There you go. Yep. Stop it tilting much. Actually, it's quite good. It's held it in place. So let's have a quick look. Yep. Right. So what we had to do is we had to get the strings back on with the bridge lowered. So it's a bit of a kerfuffle going backwards in sort of process. But let's stick with it, and we'll stick these on one by one. Ah, I shouldn't have done that. Now, this is going to drop off my little circlip, so I'm going to need pliers, some pliers, and I'll take these off again for a minute. They were just hand cut guesswork size, really, and they just about hold on themselves, so they'll come in handy. But I needed to take them off because we have to go through front to back for the strings, which is what the wraparound string thing is. Anyway, so sadly, while I've been doing this, I've been listening to news coming in from Paris that the Cathedral of Notre Dame is burning and is likely to be nothing but a pile of ash by tomorrow morning. It's quite disturbing when you hear of, well, it makes you realise of the impermanence, the transience of all of these things, these historical buildings and structures. Yeah, it's probably get me demonetised for mentioning something painful and sad, as in a fire in Paris. Controversial, just unhappy news, unfortunately. But there we go. Stay in here a lot, come on. Yeah, so I say it'll probably be knackered and ruined by tomorrow morning. So it's pretty much nothing much left of it as it stands. Maybe the stone structure will withstand most of the fire, but that's about it. Hey. Anyway, what can I do for sitting here? Nothing. Right, so trying to get all of this right, pointing in the right direction. Then I'm going to put that on again, and then I'm going to... Oh, hello. You frightened me. Thank you.
Come on now, come get some chicken.
Put those on, push this on, spin them around the front, and then put these darn strings back on, hopefully keeping the bridge still in place.
Come on.
Is he not going in?
No, chicken.
Oh, you should have brought a bit with you. That would have done it.
Come on. It's raining, so that's a bit good. Come on. Half in, half out. Oh, and I'm getting wet.
Hey.
Come on.
Oh. Foodies. 5 minutes to foods. Right, so this has done the trick. We've got a lower action now, so I'm going to be able to, if anything, wind it slightly up a bit. So let's just get these strings back on. And the plan, before I go and get something to eat, will be to get the strings up to tension, and just check how far we can go, or how much we've got to take it back up, if anything. It didn't take actually that much off the base, so it shouldn't be that much lower. Right. Let's get these on. Find out which is which. Come on. Yes, It was a terrible shame. I felt a bit similar when we learned of Islamic State was trashing all those historical monuments in Syria and thereabouts. It's just such an awful, Iraq and Syria, it's just such an awful vandalism. But I hope, for what it's worth, I hope that this fire at Notre Dame doesn't turn out to be an act of deliberate vandalism or provocation or any kind of thing like that. Let's hope it was just a fire, because yeah, it would be pretty nasty otherwise. Now I can't really get this to stay on with the proper winding, so I'm just going to have to do the best I can to get it just to go on for the time being. Right, so we're nearly there. Fiddle sticks, fiddly sticks. So the plan is, I've got to go, I think I'm going to try and go over, get in touch with Mark and see if he's free to for me to come over and upload or set uploading a pile of longer videos. I've got some left over from a few weeks ago and I'm behind in those, but I've also planned to do a couple of short ones every week on various different subjects. I've always been a bit reluctant to do that because in part I don't want, oh crap, what's going on here? I don't want to, I've got these strings back to front, probably have. Doesn't really matter for the time being. I don't ever want to, I never wanted to set out to sort of present myself as this sort of expert showing something new every week, how to do something. I kind of like to prefer to just do what I do, and if anyone finds that useful, then there you go, that's great. But I don't like the idea of setting out to go, you know, this is the way you do this, that or the other. Anyway, so I'm thinking of a couple of subjects or little things to do it on, just to keep in touch with everybody who follows this channel, and also, oh crikey, because it's very easy for me to forget when I'm busy here all the time. You guys out there forget or think something terrible's happened to me some of the time, and it never has, thankfully, touch wood. But I'm always busy, but I'm invisible because I'm not uploading, so I have to kind of get my head around that and be a bit more proactive to get up some content. And obviously the only way I can do that is by keeping or doing some very, very short pieces, which I can upload from home, because apart from that I can't upload the large files on my home broadband because it's rubbish. Right, so just before I go off to get something to eat, let's do the tuning on this. Oh, come on. Right, well, it's a quick check. In fact, we might be spot on the mark here, really, and that'll be good. We are down at exactly 1.1 and a little bit low on this top one as well, low E. So, truth to tell, this can go back up a tiny bit, which I'll do with this. We also have to put these adjuster intonation, gross intonation screws back on. Just so that we have a chance to adjust them if necessary. They can be useful if you're way off the mark. You can push the bridge way back and give you a chance to get intonation, whereas you might otherwise not be able to do it. Having both the fine tune and the gross tuner, if you gross intonation screw, really does improve on the traditional tunematic bridge, which only has this tiny short travel on top here, and if that goes wrong, then you're just kind of stuffed, really. We'll see where it gets to. a bit later on, but in terms of playing action right now, it's quite interesting. The points of intonation have all moved, so the little marks here have all moved back. So I suspect I'm quite a bit off the intonation here. So I should probably come back some way. Well, let's just have a quick earful. Yeah, it's too short, so I can hear it needs quite a bit of gross adjustment, shall we say. Obviously I'm going to have to slack off. Now what I'll do is I'm just going to, before I go in food, I'm just going to get this lined up to where I can see the marks on the strings, and that'll give me a sort of a visual positioning, so I can get quite a big broad strokes in, and there's actually quite a lot of adjustment has to happen here. So I've got my little washer, which my little circle-y thing going there. Okay. Keep going back, and I'm looking for the black marks on the strings, really. Where are they? Come on, oh yeah, still about a millimetre or two back. So again, I'll just take off the tension. So it's quite useful having those little marks on the strings from previous playing, so it tells me physically where to start from, and then the rest will be a fine-tune adjustment when it comes to it. So kind of almost there now. Just bring this out to match. We'll square that up with the pickups around. Just keep it looking tidy. About there. Right, get a tune, a note, and then we'll do the fine tuning from there. It's close, but it's still not there yet. According to these up here. Where's the marks? Come on, show me the marks. Funny how you can see them one minute and then you lose them the next. Where were they? I saw them a second ago. Okay, there's a couple there, about a millimetre or so. Right, this will be the last adjustment before food. Whoa. Nearly there. I can see the marks are lining up pretty much now. So I've got the, if you like, the gross overall intonation. Okay, nice and low. Okay, nice tilted tilt on there, but can maybe adjust that by pushing the little circlips around to the other side, or push them in if we can a little bit further. I'm not sure if that's possible. Come on, in you go. Yeah, that's not too bad actually. Okay, that will prop it a bit. See you after food. Hello, welcome back. Only a blink of the eye for you guys, but so just trying this out after having lowered the bridge, thinned the bridge down a bit. What I noticed straight away is this. And that's a combination of a slightly high fret down here, and also the relief being completely flat in the neck. So I think we have to be a bit pragmatic, and let's put a tiny bit of relief into the neck, as well as looking in a minute if we need to do fret leveling as well. Now, up to a point, this guitar didn't seem like, it didn't start off seeming like it needed fret leveling, but easy, Tiger. We can't be sure. It would be uncommon. Well, it wouldn't be entirely uncommon for rallies because they actually have been quite good overall. So I'm just going to prise off this for a minute. Come on. Thank you. Then we'll do a little adjustment using a usually there's a 4mm hex. So a bit too flat, so I'm going to look to reduce the slack off the truss rod a little bit and see if we get. Well, that's not going to work, is it? This one is desperately trying to pull itself back through. This string is like falling apart or something. Anyway, I expect it to break any second now. Guess who? Hello, you. Guess who? It's you. What did I want? Hello, wet boy. You are wet. Oh, you are stinky wet. Look, you're kind of slowing this down a bit, Morris. I hate to say. I'm just going to put that there for a minute. You are. I'm going to be nice and friendly to you, but you are definitely slowing things down a bit. And you're also very wet. There. Dry you off. There's a good boy. Yes. Make you all dry and warm. There. How about that? Did you like that? Yes. Don't put your fur on the camera. We could do without any more smudges on the camera, young sir. Anyway, people like to see you on the camera, so say hello and stay and be friendly. But we need you to go down. Anyway, so having lowered the action, and by virtue of having an incredibly flat relief profile, i.e. almost flat, no relief practically what to speak of, then any uneven frets will stand out very quickly, or any even slight back bow of the neck will show up, and in that case it made the low notes on the high E difficult to play. So I've had a little go at adjusting that. Would you like to come down now and have a sit on your stool? There you go. Sit on the stool. Alright, don't sit on the stool, just sit on the floor for a bit. Anyway, so I'm looking to see if there's any improvement. Yeah, a bit more relief. Now we might find these play. Okay, so that little tiny bit of relief doesn't help, Morris. That little bit of change in the relief profile has freed up these notes. So let's just double check where we've got to. We've got an action of, oh, Morris, 1.5 slightly over here, and actually 1.5 there. So that's changed now with the adjustment. So let's go down a little bit on both of these. Oh, have we not got any more? We haven't got any more downward adjustment. Oh, that's because it's tipping, isn't it? Oh, Morris. Yeah, that's the problem. It's lowered down, but it's still tipping a little bit. What we need is these around the front. Right, I'm going to have to slack this off again. This is where the strings are going to break finally. So we're kind of run out of. There you go. God, I hate that when that happens. Right, Morris, clear off, would you please? Just know that. I can tell when the string's going to do that. Down you go. Come on. Now I'm string short in this game. Morris, please go away for now. That's really weird when it does that. It starts to stretch noticeably and then it just gives up the ghost at some point and breaks away. Okay, so what's happening is because of the construction, the shape of this bridge, it's tipping up at the back because we've created that bit more room. So it's really not giving us the benefit of that additional thinning down unless we can get these little circlips that sit around the back, which is where I had hoped to get them. And now we're a string short, so I'm going to have to dig around and find some of my old spare strings. Okay, so I almost have to get this right off, so it's starting to be complete and utter pain in the what's it. Okay, so there's the little circlipy thing. We want it round the back, doing its thing at the back like that. Same with this one. And the back there. Let's see if we can actually. No, Morris. Just don't, Morris. Okay, so that can go down a bit, and this one is where it's at. Oh, Mars. I have to find a replacement, temporary replacement for the high E now, just to be able to check this out. From the, oh Morris, come on baby, out of here. Come on, you're gonna cause serious trouble. Every time you get lost in here, I end up with a bottle of super glue tipped over or something. Seriously, just beat it for now. You're not actually helping today. No offence. Right. So I've got a bunch of leftover things, free things. Let's try and find a spare toppy. It's always the toppy that goes, so there's almost never a spare one knocking about. I'm going to need these out for another thing shortly, so let's get those out of the way. Let's break open yet another spare set, which I'm going to nick one of. Sorry, see, it's just the simplest thing. It just isn't simple. That's the funny part. Nothing's ever simple. Okay, where's my strings? Here's my pairs. How many sets of things are in here? What? B1, B2, E. Right, okay. So another incomplete set to be used for spacing strings and things. Useful for aligning when you need to align a guitar neck with a new bridge or something like that. Now here we've got to get this on here without taking the bridge off again, so it's quite tricky to feed it through. Well, with a bit of that and a bit of curving, pre-curving, we can do it. But now at this end, whatever was going wrong at the top here, we've now got a piece of tied up wire that we've got to dig out, which is really annoying because it breaks right there on the peg. Do all I can to get it out. Yep. Right. Let's see where we've got to this time. I suspect we'll be just about right. We're as low as we can get on the high E. this on here. Always the way I hate these bridges for this reason. You always have to stop, undo it, get the string in the right place, do it up again, and again it's gone off. I just don't like them. It's simple. Right, now we've got, cut this. Right, start again. God Lord. So quick look, right, good, that's about 1.25 and that is 1.25, so it's about the same. We're not going to get any lower on this without, well, I don't know what without, frankly. There's no there's no further reduction we can do without replacing the bridge altogether, and it would have to be a different kind altogether to get a better action. I was just wondering, I can't be bothered to string a new bridge because it's going to just, it's not really going to make that much difference. Oh, I don't know though. See, if I hadn't said that, that's a 15 quid bridge, then I would be giving up. Actually, is it a 15 quid bridge or is it a cheaper Chinese number? Let's see if it even looks like it's lower in height. That's the main thing. Does it start from lower? It's pre-compensated, which is actually just as good. And the question is overall, it's in terms of bulk, it's lower. The only question is, would it fit exactly on those posts? And I have a feeling that it might or might not. I wonder. Let's try something here while we're still at it. It's a pain really, but actually this is going to prove to be nigh on impossible. So this is, again, the limitation of this guitar. Couldn't get a low enough action with the existing bridge, so that's a downer. It's a fixed, obviously it's a fixed fixed wing, you know what I mean, a fixed neck, glued neck, so there's no way of kind of shimming it to bring the thing up. So he's stuck basically with the lowest action you can get, and if it isn't good enough, like it isn't good enough for me, then I'm annoyed and I have to do something else. Now, I'd be prepared to ditch this original bridge for a lower one if we can get the improved action out of it. That's what I would be prepared to do. I can't get that out without taking the strings off again. Here we go again, strings all off, all that straightening out, waste of time. So it's just one of those things, you have to keep trying until you get where you need to get. Now, if this doesn't reduce the action or fit, then we're in a different game altogether. So this is standing up at that, and that's, as far as I can see, it's fractionally, possibly a little bit lower. The question is, does it fit on these posts? That's the first question, and the answer is not on those particular ones, but these are a bit scuffed up anyway, so I wouldn't be upset to lose these and replace them. Go away. Going to see now how well, if at all, because it all depends on the pitch of these, the tilt of these posts, and if they're a bit too far apart by a fraction or too close together, this thing will not fit. And I'm afraid that's what we're looking at. It is nigh on possible to fit, although they're different heights, so let me just tweak that a bit more. That's really close. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can enlarge these. The simplest way to do it is slightly enlarge these arms, because they're so tight. It's just ridiculously built. You barely can get that on, so these need to be wider. But the question is, overall, is this lower? Because that's the only thing I really care about at this point in time. So I have to now take one of these strings out and start again. And we'll see what this looks like going over the top of here. If it's a better action, then I'll replace this. And we'll just widen these a little bit. I won't go with the American Tone Pro style because that's going to be taller anyway, probably. Okay, so here we are sitting at the lowest lowest level. Annoyed, frustrated with this already. So let's have a look just to check that this comes down at a lower angle, a lower pitch, which allows us, right, we've got those upward movement to go on this one. So that's worth replacing with. So all it needs is a little bit of widening. I'll just double check that it is only a little bit of widening. I'm not sure. I am not sure. Oh Lord. Just the two of them. They're dead centre, and they sort of look like they want to go on with a bit of a push. Make them so tight fitting that you've got absolutely no leeway at all when it comes to the bridge, and this one has no leeway either. That one is. Yeah, well, maybe. So let's see. I don't want to do this because it's throwing good money after bad. Let's have a look. We'll put those two together where they belong for a minute. It might actually fit, but I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be low enough. That's my concern. That goes there. And that one. This is a nice bridge. It adds to the price, and I don't think it's going to be low enough, even if it fits, which it doesn't want to do because it's. Well, it does actually. Okay, that's not so bad. Let's try it. Oh. Let's try it. If it fits, we'll go with it because it's the easiest thing, and I've got another one spare for when I need to make a new guitar. It's damn good looking. But we'll try it. I suspect it'll be too tall, which will defeat the object of the whole thing, but we shall see. Probably an absolute no-no because it'll be too tall. We shall see. Oh, actually, no. You know what? I'm impressed. That's actually better. Okay. Let's right. I actually don't mind using this as long as I get my money back for it. Naturally, because it's a much better quality bridge. It does all the same things, just looks and feels better by miles. I need to buy some more before the supplier in America stops selling them at the good price that I got them at. Now, this is the problem when you're working with sacrificial strings. By this stage in the game, they're starting to misbehave because they're been bent so many times. I'll be lucky if I'll be lucky if I can get them all on for one more testing of the setup. Look at that quality. Loads of intonation room as well, intonation travel. That bridge also has 2 grub screws in the back to allow for further fine adjustment. We're starting to get gnarled up old bits of wire now. Probably could just use that other set that I've taken one out of. Might end up being easier than doing this, but now the trouble is I'm going to end up liking this guitar if I start putting better equipment on it. That's what I didn't want to do. Yeah, this is right nice and low, right proper low. So this is where it gets knackered up now. It does look so much better than that horrible original thing that came on it. I don't like this thing. I don't like that at all. Right, well, I'm immediately taken by the way this bridge works with this. So I think it's a definite. Going to stick with it. I say, well, it's about 20 quid with postage by the time we add that bridge onto it, but I would rather that than not having a good action, because that defeats the object of having a good guitar. Okay, so that is fretting out because it's too low an action now, which is fine. We'll sort it out in a minute. This last 2 strings through with all their curly bits. So this gets really fiddly, and you end up having to do stuff like this for hours. If you're not careful. Rightio. Okay, 1 second to last one. Let's just get this on, please. Yeah, it feels good, this bridge. It feels just right for this guitar. Should always have been on here. I've seen these before. I don't mind wasting the time trying that. It was worth a go, but you know, when it doesn't work, you just have to accept it. You can, you know, basically we could get it lower, but it was susceptible to riding up at the back, which means you lose the enhancement you just got if you're unlucky. And it's, you know, the more you have to do it, the more it's likely to ride up. So you either have to go replace it or live with a high action, which I didn't want to do. So we've gone for the replacement option, which I think is a better bet, despite the fact it costs a bit more, but it's better to have a good guitar. Probably adds a little bit of weight to the body end of things too, which isn't a bad thing at this rate, as we know. Now, first thing I'm going to do here is just, oh come on, put a little bit of tension on these. Not much. Right, so with my still protected, now we've got a nice bridge and brand new slots. Now I can lift them up using this wonderful thing here. I'm going to lift them clear of the thing. This is a completely different structure. All the bulk of this lies below the thing, which is excellent. Whereas that one, the bulk all lies above it. So you've got a lot more action setting opportunities or options here with this one. So it feels a ton better. So I'm going to start putting these under tension now. Get a tuning from here. Now, according to this, the intonation points are still off, but I don't know which way now. Too long, they've gone too far. This time you've gone too far. Yeah, it's too far back, so we now have to get the little Allen key out. We're going to get the right one. We're going to wind it backwards, and slack this off so that we can bring the whole set of saddles forward in that direction. Okay, and that's about it in respect of how far we can go. It's just a quick check here. So when we were on there, yeah, they were quite some way forward. We still have we've got enough room to reach all the way to there, so we'll get onto that in a second. Still a bit fiddly, so let's take this pickup right down out of the way to begin with, if we can, because we need access to these little screws. Come on, down you go. It doesn't want to go any further down. That's helpful. Not. Try and get it down. Can we reach the screws? Yep, just about. Right, so the first thing is we're going to bring these screws quite some way forwards, if I can see what the hell I'm doing. Are they X Stars Phillipses? Yes, they are. What's going on? Come on. Come forward, damn you. Can I do it from that side? No, I can't. It's really hard to see what's going on here. Lots of shiny lights getting in the way. And that is actually not spinning correctly. Looked like it was, so that's no good. Let's try a different one. That's going to be no good at all. And this is where it gets a bit difficult because we've got to get an exact match now. Otherwise we aren't going to be able to do this. So I'm coming in at a stupid angle. Right. God, this just becomes more and more complicated by the second. It's an absolute pain in the... Watch it. Now I've got to slack this all off again because I'm going to have to set the intonation on this away with the strings off because we just have no ability to do it with the strings on. So this, now this, you can see this guitar is already not worth it, anything in the part exchange. It's now losing value. Obviously the time I spend trying to get this to play right, so it's very, it doesn't take long before it's no longer economically viable really, and it just becomes a bit of a albatross. So I can't get this damn thing off without the strings being either completely off or almost entirely off. Morris, I don't need you up here right now. Whatever you do, do not find your way onto here. So as you can see, it's now refusing to come off simply. But I'm now straining against the strings still, which have made the whole thing difficult. So they all come off again. This time they're almost certainly going to break. What an absolute pain. Now at this point I start to wish I just sold it on as was. You know, trying to improve it just becomes a little bit of a hiding to not much. Okay, so now we've got, what is this, a stripped out screw by the looks of it, because you can't even see what the hell is going on there. So you haven't got the angle to reach the screw properly, so you can only just about get it tightened up. It's terrible, terrible screw to adjust. So there's compressing the screw, right, so there's a limit to how far I can, how far I can make this go. So I'm going to try and set a range, an intonation range, but it doesn't want to do it. It doesn't like any of these screw heads. And the danger is, so you can see it's pissing me around now, excuse the French. If we don't get this spot on, this is going to strip each one of these out because they're not actually made very well. And press really hard. Where are we going? Brains. We're going that way. Right. So the challenges of this one now could be that it doesn't let us come close enough, far enough forward. Let's just have a look where this one would have sat. So the intonation would have been kind of near the centre of the line, and the intonation is going to be near the centre of the line. We don't want it to push any further back, so we want to take off, remove as much of the push of these things as possible, so it sits as close to the front as possible. And then we can't actually take it apart to get at the springs to reduce them down in size. That's as far as I can compress that spring. That's the end of that story. I'll bring everything else up to match, as close as I can get, and then we'll do the rest with the grub screws if we have to. So that comes to there, that comes to there, and that comes to there. Right, we'll try this one more time, and if we don't get that on, then it isn't going to work very well, full stop. It's still showing. Get out the back, get out the back. Right, so now I'm going to discover that this is actually can't work with the bridge posts placed where they are, and that's a shame if that's the case, because then we're back to square one. Back to figuring out what we're going to do if we don't want to have to stick with a higher than desirable action. Okay. Okay, let's imagine we're close to where we want to be. Let's get the rest of these on. I could be completely wrong, but it would be nice if we were. I'm fed up with this already. At least Morris is taking it easy on the stool down there. So that bit of intonation setting there, because the metal's soft, I had to do as much as I could off the guitar. You don't have a very good access with a screwdriver, which means you don't get a very clean bite onto the screw head, which means you strip it very easily. And there's no means of replacing it because it's not constructed that way. So you really have to kind of set it right the first time off, if you're lucky. Anyway, it's not the end of the world, but I just wanted to get this thing out of the way before I started on customer jobs. But I've got a feeling that this is now costing me too much time already. So, do as you're told, strings. Just go through them. Yeah, it doesn't take long before any profitability disappears in backwards and forwardsing like this. So, spend a couple of hours trying to make this work better than it does. And then we're still left with the slight issue of it being top heavy. Maybe a fraction less so now, but even still not great without the addition of some ballast, which I think I'll probably find a way to do, because I've gone this far now, I'm not going to give up on it. Right, so the first thing I want to do is get this up to pitch, and then once I've got it to pitch, going to look at the action, see if we're all right with that. If the action's good, then I'm going to look at the intonation with the tuner very quick as possible. Right, now take this and we'll check it out with the tuner, see what we've got. Perfectly positioned, so I can't actually rest it on there. Annoying, to say the least. Thank you. Did I get that spot on? That was luck. No, that's sharp. Okay, so it's interesting. So that's sharp, so we need to pull this end further away. Let's do it in one go. Of course, now we don't have the ability to do it without slacking the entire thing off again. Too short. We could push it away with the it's probably easier to do it with the X key. So that was too sharp, this was okay, so we'll just drag it all out this way at this end by tightening this up. Velcro, it's really good when you want it. Okay, so we've still got a bit of, oh God, a bit of sharp going on those top strings. The question is, can I use the screwdriver to successfully push them away, and I don't think I really can. That's the problem. Well, I can, but it's not easy. Come on. See how ridiculously these things are designed as far as I'm concerned. I'm just going to keep going back until we get to where we need to be. Oh, Christ. Got no choice, you can't, these aren't on the front, sorry, on the back, so you can't do them from this side, you have to do them from this side. Oh. Fed up, fed up, fed up, had enough of this. Thank you, finally. Lord have mercy, that was a bit of a painful kerfuffle, but we're there. Looks nice. Finally. Right, after all of that time consuming sing about, I've got a whole pile of stuff kicking around, and I'm going to probably want to call it a day soon. So 1.1 there, it's pretty high, pretty low, and 1.5 there, which is a bit too high. So let's have a look. We've got up and down. So let's go down and up. Try it again. Okay, 1.25, 1.25 equals. Okay, we're getting close now. Now's the time we can actually test whether all the notes play. So let's have a reference note. Good, getting there. Okay, so that's a bit low on that side, frankly. So we're going to come up a tiny bit on the bass side. There's no need to be below 1.5 really, and that's just dead on 1.5. I'm going to give it the lightest of fret levels, and I'm pretty much run out of time now because of everything messing around. But the good news is that we've got a bridge that works really well with it, and it's a pretty chunky improvement on the previous one. This horrible thing, which is ugly looking, that's a brute, a handsome brute by comparison. So I'm actually okay about the condition of the nut. There's no tuning issues there. The only question I had, which I haven't got round to yet, which I'll have to get to tomorrow, was was there any value in changing out this set of tuners here for a different set of tuners, something like this. So the only way I'm going to do that is to get a direct comparison tomorrow, but I won't get to do that until I reach the stage where I take the strings off, and before that happens I will have needed to have fret leveled, which is good because it will clean up all the filthy old untouched frets at this end. So to begin with, we might as well just start marking things up ready for, in fact I could do the fret leveling now, but I won't do any of the polishing out. So the first thing I'm going to do is to mark up the frets with the strings still on ready. It's a bit fiddly, it's easier to take them off to do this, but having pulled them off and on several times already in this session, I don't want to break them because I need them on here for this fret leveling part. So I'm kind of at the stage where they've really done a bit too much work as sacrificial strings already, and I don't really want to expect them to do any more. Neighbours. Yeah, ta 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 ta. Okay, so slowly working my way along here, and then we'll get the banana fret leveling tool down and get stuck in. It's only going to need a very small amount of work, and it will free up the tiny little zizzes that there are on here, and at the same time it will also clean up these corroded old unplayed frets at the top end. And there's nothing wrong with them, they just haven't been paid any attention to by whoever had this guitar and probably played chords on it for a bit and then gave up. Right, so that's fun. Once I've done this, I'll give everything a bit of a tidy up and we can come back to it. Tomorrow's going to be routing time. I've got to get quite a bit done, so I'll probably leave this till later in the day. So here we go, the old banana method. It's very flat, so we're pretty much straight on the mark without any adjustment. So we're working with a dead flat neck, relatively speaking, or pretty flat, even with a little bit of relief, that tiny bit that I put into it. So I'm just looking to just take off any marginal tiny unevenness that exists, and it will be very slight. And really the only indicator at this point I want is that all the notes play cleanly, and then I'll move on. That'll do, and then we'll see a little bit later on whether it bends cleanly or not. This is a set of 10s and I would probably go to 9s on here for my preference, so I can bend a lot more. Okay, now this needs a little bit of adjustment, and that's a fraction too much. It's incredibly sensitive. People often ask me which is the best truss rod to get for this, and I always say you have to experiment to find the ones that work in a way that you can work with. It's just not a simple answer, unfortunately. But when you find the one that works for you, like this, you'll get a feel for how it operates and be able to read what it's telling you about the condition of the frets. And that's the good bit. When you find the one you can use, it kind of tells you what's going on in a very good diagnostic way. You learn a lot about the fret condition from the feedback from this thing. So again, clean notes. Now here we want bends. So far so good. And then when we do the G track next, we'll bend further with the E and with the B string as well. And then once we've got everything playing cleanly and the bends working nicely, then we're done. And we're ready to just reprofile the frets. So we take off the flat surface. Again, I'm listening out all the time to hear whether the nut is gripping or retarding the strings and whether there's any pinging or any tuning issues, and there aren't any. So this plastic nut is doing its job absolutely perfectly, and I don't really see any need to interfere with it. It just doesn't really make much difference at all. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it thing certainly applied with the bridge, because it was broke in that we couldn't get the action, or I couldn't get the action I wanted. Happy. Good. We finally got there after a bit of frustration with this thing. But you can see it's already taken me longer than I anticipated. So, you know, the price of this is going to have to be in the sort of 160, 180 quid region to make back my time and the trade-in price value on it. So, you know, and that's going to make it a harder sell. And it probably will sell because people know my opinion of rallies and with a decent bridge on it, but it's going to make it a slower sell than, you know, it ought to be. And so that's the downside of the part exchange. It becomes uneconomical, and it becomes uneconomical very quickly. So that when you're thinking of 150 quid you paid for it, for example, and you're thinking that, you know, this represents a bunch of £10 notes. Well, it doesn't. It's a risk for a start. It's a risk whether or not you can sell it, that's the first thing. So it's a risk of tying up money on the wall. But the other thing that I haven't mentioned is that as a seller, there's a very real risk that you sell it and then somebody whose expectations you have no control over decides that it's not for them, they don't like it, or it doesn't play quite as well as they thought, or it's changed since it arrived and sat in the, you know, in a cupboard under the stairs or whatever. And I tend to not quibble with it. If somebody's not happy, and I'm not going to force them to stay with a guitar they hate, but even if I get it back and try and sell it on again, then I have lost any chance of the profit that there might have been in it. So it's a risk. On top of just tying it up on the wall and cash tied up on the wall, it's a risk because you're at the mercy of customers not knowing what they want exactly, or finding fault in it which they think is, you know, unacceptable, when in fact it might be really good. You know, for all you know, it's perfect, but you know, the customer is what makes your business, so you have to keep them happy. So it's very risky. Which is basically why, if this was bought for £150, trade-in value ought not to be more than about 60, because there's no profit and the risk is too great. Simple as that. And I would, at that point, I would much prefer to say to the customer, look, why don't you put it on Gumtree, you do all the risk and the work of selling it, and then bring me cash, you know. But I took this in part exchange because the customer is a very good customer, and I wanted him to be happy with his new Reloved custom guitar. So it's not such a, you know, there was a means to an end in this case, but generally speaking, it's not a great business idea, and it just goes to explain that risk and the time you've seen this take to get it to a playable, you know, a decent condition, or to the standard I like. That makes it not a very good proposition. Perfect. So even if you wanted to keep it simple and said, well, I've taken it in part exchange, why don't I just flip it and turn it out for the same money and get my cash back on it, then you've got another issue, which is putting out something that possibly could be less than the standard that you'd want for it, because what you'd want for it would be, you know, to be known for a particular standard. Hey, I bought this from Reloved Guitars. Well, you don't want it going out with buzzing frets or tall frets or scratchy fret ends or whatever. So the truth is, once I've taken it in part exchange, I can't not improve it, because I can't send it out if it's got flaws like this. Can't get a low action because the bridge is flawed from the outset. Well, that's going in the bin or scrap for possible use later in an emergency. But so you can see that it's much more complicated than you think when you hold your guitar that you paid 150 quid for in your hand. That's all I'm saying. So I just kind of, if you find yourself looking for a part exchange with a dealer of some kind and you think they're insulting you with what they're offering you, I just want you to keep in mind the issues that I've raised here, because they're very real, pertinent, and it makes it quite simply a pretty unattractive proposition. So I'm kind of a fair way through this now. What I'll just do before I finish is I'll take these, I'll reprofile the frets, I'll take the tuners off, and I'll take them in, and I'll perhaps take the camera in and do a quick indoors weight check to see if there's a significant difference between these two sets of tuners, in which case I may also change them out and keep the other ones for another day. I'm not too bothered about that, because again, I'm now in the mode of, okay, if I'm going to sell this with my name on it, I want it to be kind of surprisingly good. I want somebody to pick it up again and again and play it. So it's in my interest to swap out and make it work if I can positively influence the balance of the thing. So there we go. Like it. That bridge is staying. Right. So let's get the tuners off first. Ready to go. This also, by the way, allows me to give the headstock a clean while things are all off, and that cleaned headstock goes a long way to making the guitar look pretty new, or certainly very refreshed. So I'll flip it over and we'll get these in and undo these. Right, so that's all out, and then we'll pull these off. Quite chunky, these Grover copies, but it can't be that much difference in weight. But I've never found out how much it is, so it's definitely worth knowing, and I can let other people know. It's a useful piece of information, especially when you're dealing with SGs and you've got a top heavy one and you want to find any possible chance you can to reduce the weight. at one end and increase it at the other. So we've probably increased the mass on that bridge, which is good. Possibly we could decrease the mass of these tuners, which would be good. Then we'll see what else we have to do. And it sounds silly, but even a great big lump of plasticine in there would add weight, and it would probably be a better idea. You can mould it into the back of the guitar. I hadn't thought of that. I've got a big chunk of plasticine. Why not? Probably stay in place as well. Press it into shape. Quite like the idea of that. Non-destructive. Doesn't have to be glued in, screwed in, resined in, just pressed into the curves. I'll weigh a chunk of plasticine as I go in. So let's put this handful of tuners in the pocket. Actually, let's put them in here. We'll find the plasticine from wherever it is. I'll take that in as well. Chunky. So these versus these. Yeah, they're different. Okay, let's just take care of these. Medium-sized side, and then we'll just take off the hard, sharp edges of the flat spots. Make sure it's rounded off so we get a nice arch-formed fret back out of it. Yep. Everything looking good. So it's showing there's very little leveling taken place, but just enough to spruce up the way it plays, which is good. Good. Done. Right. That is now hanging up for the night. I'm going to find the plasticine and we're going to go and do some weighing. See you again tomorrow. Well, let's just record. This is a new camera, so hold on a second while I figure out how to make it charge. No, that's weird. It doesn't even appear to be charging. You go on there. Sorry, it's all a bit new and try it out and stuff. It doesn't appear to be charging, so I really don't know. If it doesn't charge, we are going to end up conking out. Well, I'll just keep running until it conks out, but I don't know why that isn't charging. Okay, so just want to finish this off. I have gone to the lengths of adding some cling filmed plasticine, which was my sneaky plan, into the back here, down into there, down into there, as far as I could reach. It's difficult to get it in through the hole, but I've now just about nearly balanced the thing. But the problem is it isn't going to work with, it's still going to be slightly unbalanced with these original tuners on. So in order to replace them, oh, here they are, in order to replace them with the lighter ones, we have to do a bit of modification. So these are cut for a slightly larger thingy. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some resin. They fit in the hole nicely, but they're a bit loose. So I'm going to stick them in with some gunge resin. The thing with this guitar is there's just no point having equipment on it that unbalances it. So I'm going on the basis that if I was going to keep this guitar, which you never know, I may end up doing, I would want this to not, the last thing on earth I want this to do is to be unbalanced. I would hate that. It would drive me nuts trying to play this. So the balancing bit on this guitar as well as it looking nice and all the rest of it, but the balancing part is really critical. Oh my god, this is hard to get out. I know those of you will say, why don't you cut the holes bigger? And every time I do it, it doesn't seem to make any difference. There's a limit to how fast this stuff does or doesn't come out. And fast it isn't. Anyway, I'm about to, I was going to pull the trigger, as they say, on some auto weld, which is a bigger volume if I start working by more kind of professional volumes of the stuff. And I was going to get some of that in, but I've just held off that. I don't like the sound of the chainsaw. Now this always has a fair amount of dust in it from the previous thing. So actually what I think I might do is do it the other way around. I think I've done this before. I think I know I've done this before. Let's do it this way around. It makes more sense. Stick those babies in, comme ça, and those babies in, because this way we'll fill in around the dust and stuff, and it doesn't matter. It's not going to be a problem. So we'll do that, and then we'll flip that. Make sure it's solid. Yep. And we'll do it like this. In fact, we won't do it like that. We'll do it more like this. Something like that. It's close to. So the matter at hand will be to get some resin in on the edge there, and then let it slide down, push it down to where the ferrules sit. It's actually quite difficult to do, surprisingly difficult to do, but with a bit of gravity and a bit of care we should be able to get it. A more liquid resin would be helpful at this point, but we've got what we've got. The thing I'm obviously trying to avoid doing is getting it falling into the actual bore of the ferrule itself. I don't want it clogging it up, so I'm just trying to haul it back so it goes down the little gap at the side, but it's quite difficult to manage. Anyway, that one's sort of done. This one's sitting there waiting. So it doesn't take an awful lot to get these stuck down. It just requires getting a bit in there, which just kind of buffers, or what's the word, fills out the gap. Really, that's what we're looking to do. So it sits in quite nicely. You have to get the resin down low, on the down low, and then if you're not careful you run out and it's none left. So I'll squeeze the last bit of this in, and then we'll use a clean, sorry, can you see? We'll use a clean cocktail stick or two to try and just guide it down into the sides. And it's not too important if we get a bit on the top here, because that looks messy, but that's going to be covered by the tuner anyway. And we will have a bit of screw hole filling. Okay, that's the raw stuff in. Okay, actually we could use a bit of this now. Dun, dun, dun. It's not a very good view for you, I'm sure, but see if we can get you a better view. Okay, I've just wasted 10 minutes not recording anything, but now I'm recording. I don't know why, but there we go. I've added weight to this guitar, and I've switched over the tuners, or I'm in the process of switching over the tuners for these lighter Wilkinson vintage tuners, which look the part on this guitar actually. So I've taken the Jinho heavy duty Grover copies off. So I'm going to need to let this set, and once this is set, I've used some resin to just fix in or stop the ferrules from spinning because they were just a little bit loose. So we're going to let that set, and once that's set I'm going to replace or fix these tuners, and then we will add any screw holes. I think we might just get away with reusing these existing tuner holes, but we'll probably need to drill some, well, we will need to drill some extra pilot holes, which is fine. So also what I've done is I've added in some weight in the body now. I've put two things. Look, I've put 3 pieces of Vaseline. No, what's the stuff? Trampoline. No. What the hell is the word I'm looking for? Oh my god, I'm suffering from old age. Plasticine. God. I've put 3 pieces of plasticine wrapped in cling film into the body, and that is going to, that's acting as a ballast, which is adding some weight. And I've also put a tiny piece of lead in there as well, although you actually, excuse the noise, ooh, you won't actually be able to see how it fits in. Let's get you balanced roughly. Yeah, it's in there. You can sort of look, if you look hard enough, you can see a bit of blue down inside there. I put some black tape over the lead lump that I put in there. So the combination of this bridge, some ballast in here, and lighter tuners is going to just balance it out, which is great. Now what I want to do next is to clean this residue off here. Next thing I want to do is I want to polish out the frets, and I'm going to need to just let these these ferrules, the resin on this ferrules, set first before I do that, because I don't want them sliding out while I've got the guitar the other way up. So I shall come back in a little while when that's done. I'll go and have a cup of tea. See you in a minute. And see if I can charge this thing. I don't know why it doesn't work. And now we are back, and this is set. Nice and solid. This tape works really well, sometimes too well. There's a little gap there I didn't notice before. That's okay. Only the things that show up when you put some glue into them. There you go. Right, so that's our ferrules in place. Now the interesting part comes when we check out the spacing. Actually, that's not bad. We should be good to go on half of them. That's good. I like it. We are good to go on half. So it's a pretty good changeover. You can actually get away without any further screw holes. It's a bit naughty there. Ah, damn. That one didn't quite work. If I don't. Boo hiss. Right, I'll do this the other way around. I'll fix the thingy. The reason that happened is I pushed on the I pushed against the ferrule because it was a bit in the middle of it, which caught. I've dropped some lacquer resin on there too, which is not so good. It's just actually it's before I make that same mistake. Let's just clean out those other two. Just a bit of kerfuffle really. Just check what this is the ideal size to go through. 5.5 or 5? Run it with a 5 first. It's not good. I should have made cleaned out the fairy dust. It's my fault. I learned the hard way. Damn. Right, this one still needs cleaning out. Serve me right. Slight annoyance, but nothing too bad. That one is needs slightly fractionally larger drill. Going to be even bigger. 6. It's a 6, isn't it? Right, there we go. But that's going to drop off, as is this. Right annoying that is. Okay, so a bit more work to do, and that one's got to go as well. Oh. Yeah, that serves me right for not clearing out the buffer powder. It was a shortcut and I paid dearly for it. That's not lining up exactly, so where is it now? Okay. Thank you. In a way, that's a good example of shortcutting. It's going to take me more time to get that working now. Get those ferrules firmly in place. I mean, that's good. That fits nicely. So we'll get us the Dremel drill, and we'll go for some pilot holes. I might undo this because that's now getting in the way and it's not actually used anymore. So I can reposition these while I've got them in here, which I will do slightly. Kind of a little bit dictated by where the previous hole fell, but we should be all right. Get rid of that. Also, I'll get rid of this slightly annoying thing. Very functional in its day, but right now not actually necessary and getting in the way instead. Right. So we will now add in these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the bit of resin to lock these other two down later on. Right now I want to get on with the business of polishing now, because I've got two of Simon's guitars to get on with. It should be interesting. One's a ancient acoustic given to him by our friend, with some artwork, some weird and wonderful personalised artwork on it, which has got a lot of sentimental value, but no playability value, unfortunately. We had a good look at it together, and we had to rather cold-heartedly conclude that there's so much wrong with it that it really didn't make any sense to try to make it play. Much as I hate to abandon an underdog. Okay, let's get that drill bit back where it belongs. Still one missing, which I think is in the house. I will, if necessary, one of these days I'm going to get another one of these Makita drill sets, because to have one set of drills bits that you know is intact and has everything you need is priceless. Right, so my other thing went over here somewhere. Where did it go? Where did it go? There it is. Okay, so those two, we'll come back to those. Right, so all I'm going to do now, I'll go off camera a bit, but I'm going to mask off this neck, brush it off a bit first. We've fret leveled it, and we have re-crowned it, so now all I want to do is to mask it off. I'm going to polish it out, which I'll do off camera. I'm tempted to change the nut, but I'm going to go on the basis of if it isn't broke, don't fix it, because there is nothing wrong with this, and I hate to do things just, I don't want to do things just for the, I don't know what the word is, it's not snobbishness, no, it's, I think, just, you know, because it's supposed to be better. If you happen to be lucky enough to get a plastic nut that works and creates no friction on the strings and does the job, then there's no point changing it. It's not, it'll never be the source of your, or it isn't the source of any tuning issues you've got. That will probably then be slack in the strings that you haven't stretched out. Technically, no, I'll do those later. I was just feeling much better in terms of body weight, although that's quite an extreme thing to do. Shove plasticine and other things in there. Okay, oh right. This one I've been using as a bit of a pin cushion for routing, but it'll still do fine. So here we go. We'll get ourselves 4 strips of masking tape, and then divide them up into different thicknesses, and then I will sand out the frets with 3 different grades of paper, 600, 1000 and 1500. Then I will switch to a set of micro mesh, which will go from 1500 down to 12,000, which is a pretty fine polishing surface by the time you get there. So, okay, now one thing that's always helpful to do, let's do this at least accurately, because I always misjudge this. So we've got 63, 31 and a half. Is that right? 31 and a half? Yeah, 31 and a 30, 15.5, 0.75, 15.75, that feels about right. 15.75. Okay, so let's give this a, I'm just giving this a sort of division, so if I use this for cutting tape, I know where I'm going to draw my cut lines. So we've got evenly sized bits of tape. It's a bit over precise, but I don't like having different sized bits of paper. Right. So first one into 3 sections of 3, or into width, 3 widthwise. And again, this is a bit guessworkish, but as long as these pieces have straight edges, they do the job. So 2 of these divided thirds, thin wise, long wise, and then the other 2 pieces divided in half. I find that does for everything I need on one guitar, beyond the stage where I've used obviously full-size tape. We've got a low tack shortage down this neck of the woods. This is my last roll of low tack. My local guy is struggling to, well, he's struggling to be able to order the stuff. I think it's out there in the world, but his business is the kind of volume of business at the moment is so low that he can't afford to make an order from the usual supplier. So as a result, it's kind of down on everything. It's a real shame because I try to buy as much as I can from him. He's in Tavistock Market. He's a really nice guy. Hello Paul, if you're watching this. Really helpful, and you know, for years, or since he's taken over that hardware concession, I've been buying from him. But yeah, when you're running a very small business, and I think went in the other day, and when I bought some stuff, bought some resins and bits and pieces, paper, sandpaper, I think it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he'd had 7 customers in total, or something like that, very small number, including myself. So you know, it becomes impossible, and that is of course that's the real challenge of real world versus online business these days, and it's a battle that real world business was always going to lose, unfortunately. You know, that old thing of, you know, when you run a hard copy real world business, you only have a certain amount of money you can invest in stock and risk carrying in stock, and you've only got a certain amount of space, so you have to play a game that the online retailer no longer has to worry about, particularly, well, doesn't have to worry about it so much, and that's holding stock in a certain physical location in a particular town or whatever, where you have to, you know, pay ground rent and rates and so on. And if you can call in your stock from a million different places, kind of like Amazon and others do, and or you can stash it all in one huge, super massive warehouse distribution centre, and then just call in orders and send them out to all parts of the country, then you're going to win every time over bricks and mortar businesses, unfortunately. So Paul's struggling with that people now are more and more either buying their stuff from a big out of town like B&Q, and go and sort of do everything, get all their hardware needs in one massive fell swoop, which is, I have to say, I get it, you know, it's quite for a geeky sort of making people, a trip to B&Q is actually a highlight of a week, you know. Sorry about that, but you know, people do that, or failing that, they just go to Amazon for all the hardware needs and click some buttons and it'll be with you tomorrow if you're a Prime member. So it's like, you know, and for one of Simon's guitars. I'm waiting on some logarithmic audio taper pots to replace, and you know they're coming in. The guys I ordered them on Monday, and I got a thing saying dispatched maybe with you Saturday or the following Monday, and it's like, what, a week? You crazy? I can't work on a week's turnaround for parts. You know, it's going to completely screw up the sequencing for Simon passing by and getting his guitars next week. So, but you know, it shows what we've become like. We can't even wait a week now. We're used to getting things overnight. So poor old Paul down in the market, I don't know, it's like a hiding to nothing, really. You know, and because it's it's a convenience meets price war thing. You know, if people need convenience, they'll pay. Well, you have to think, what is the convenience? If convenience becomes, convenience used to be you either drove to Tavistock and he had it, or you didn't get it at all until you went out of town. Well, it's kind of convenient to be able to get it in Tavistock, but now the convenience is, do I drive into Tavistock, take the risk that he hasn't got it, use petrol, pay for parking, get tired, flustered, whatever, versus do I go onto Amazon on my sofa and get it ordered and delivered tomorrow? And of course suddenly convenience has a completely new meaning. Convenience is Amazon, not going into Tavistock to the small independent guy, unfortunately. So it's a major shake-up. And a real supporter, customer, was suggesting the other day that you know, I should make and sell adjustable bone nuts, for example, and I kind of declined. You know, like, you know, it's a nice idea, and I'm sure some people would buy some, and in fact he's going to do it, I think, and you know, he'll sell some, and that's great. But ultimately, the kind of end destination of that choice is you know, you end up being vying for a living against, or competing for a living against, Chinese companies, for example, who will end up making it cheaper by miles, unless you undercut yourself, in which case, you know, someone like me, you can end up spending your entire week in the shed for almost no money, which is not. It's if I had to do something like that for a living, I might, but you know, I'd rather do this and make some custom guitars than to you know, try to become a mass producer of one single item. Anyway, so I'm going to go off. I'm going to get my sandpaper out, do this, come back to you when I'll also glue resin this in again, and in that case it'll be ready to put the strings back on. I'll see you then. Let us record. Right, I've got all the ferrules in. Those two are drying still, but meanwhile I can start to restring the guitar. So we've got everything where we want it. To restring the guitar, I've got some sticky glue to wipe off there. I'll do that afterwards with some naphtha. To get this off, it's probably easier to start with all the strings going through in their correct backwards reaction, and then put the bridge on. Now the bridge has probably moved a little bit during various activities along the way, so it wouldn't be surprised at all if the action has raised or lowered a little bit, so you need to be prepared to double check that. I can't just assume that it's the same as before. I do like this bridge already. It's been a great replacement for this guitar, and we'll keep an eye out to see if there are any more. I've got one hanging up there for another build at some point. To me, this is a perfectly good enough quality copy of the Tone Pros, which costs about £100, and this thing looks as good in every which way as the Tone Pros does. The Tone Pros has a slightly, I guess, a brass post bushing, but you know, apart from that, this is good. This has just got a sort of more standard thing, but it also has a good nice domed top to the posts. Okay, so if I bend these strings, first of all, they're going to want to go back to that bent position, he says. And we start by putting on the first one. There we go. I suppose I could use the string windery thing. Again, the resin is still wet there, or soft, but there's no load or anything particular on it, so I can do this. So go up to the end, pull back one, wind on over the loose one, and then the second time round under the loose one, whilst yanking it up to give clearance. Now I'm restringing with 9s. The guitar originally had 10s on it, but it's not to my liking. So I've gone lighter gauge. So we may have to, or we may want a small adjustment to the truss rod as well, or it may not. We shall see in time. Okay. So it'd be good to have this done and out of the way, so I can hang it back up indoors, or take some pictures of it in the sunshine over the next couple of days, in case I want to list it. But you never know, I may want to keep it and make these changes. I mean, it plays brilliantly. It's a very easy guitar to play, just that originally the balance was not to my liking. So having taken care of that, with a combination of some ballast, a bridge swap, pickup swap out, we may have solved that problem. I think I have, so that's good. Just lining up these posts so I can just get the strings straight on with as little faff as possible. Through, pull back one, hold it down, reverse, winding, or not reverse, but you get what I mean. Finger gymnastics to send the string under the loose string and over the top into the slot. We shall see how this bridge performs, but I can't see any problem with it. What I liked about it is, as you saw, it's all the mass of it is below. No, it's low down, low slung, so it doesn't. It's perfect for replacing where there was, you know, that we had too high an action with no possible alteration left to the original bridge. So good change out. So I will keep that in mind. If I have the same problem again, I know that this will be a good swap out to cure that issue. Okay, I also, by the way, oiled the fingerboard while off camera, and I also, what I did before sanding and polishing the frets, I also softened the edges and got rid of any fret sprout, so it's nice and soft on the edges, so you won't catch your fingers on it. Underneath, please. Thank you. Right, onto the thing. So you got a bunch of paper to throw away. Down the end of the shed there, we've got a Tintin caster waiting to get sprayed with Daphne blue. I'm having to slack these off again, otherwise I can't quite get good enough access to the string end. But yes, we're waiting to paint that Daphne blue. The painting I think it went really well. It looks good to me. I can't show it to you now because it's covered in, it's masked off, ready for painting the rest, but you will get to see it. I will feature it in the shed. Okay, so there we have it, much improved. But like I was whimpering about yesterday, we have to raise it up a little bit too now. But yeah, as I was talking yesterday, you know, it really does. You know, it takes quite a bit of setup work to make this thing the way I would like to play it, and as a result, you know, any kind of profit in it is slightly vanishing. Now we need to adjust the bridge. Way too low on the base side, but that's because I moved it while it pulled off. So get me the protected screwdriver, and I'll do it on the deck like this, and then we'll go raise up, up it comes. Now have a kind of quick look. Nice thing about this sort of bridge, of course, is you don't have to mess around with every individual saddle for height. It's probably still a little bit low on the base side. Yeah, we're on 1 mil set against 1, so a bit low on the base side, but apart from that, it's looking and sounding, feeling good. So a tiny bit up on the base side, 1.25, something like that. Okay, so I will probably call this quits any minute now and do some playing of it in the house. Lovely jubbly. Now here's the test of tests. Oh, I haven't got used to this. Hold on a sec. Not sure why I bother answering, because unless it's a Wi-Fi call of some kind of WhatsApp or a messenger call, I can't get it because I've got no mobile signal. There's enough to ring, but not enough to answer it or talk to anyone. How about that? Okay, so test now. Slippery strap. Ooh, yeah, just about right. Could still do with a tiny bit more packed in there, but better than it was, that's for sure. I just doubt we'll have much in the way of relief, so we could add a bit there. Obviously going out of tune, obviously. Yeah, still could do with a well, on a chunkier strap, this won't move at all, but just on this shiny thing, it's just on the turn the way from how I'd like it. So I could probably do with another piece of lead tucked down into there, and I'll add that, but at the moment I think I'm out of lead strips, so we'll do that later. Anyway, that's it for now. Raleigh, I don't even know the model of this guitar, but you can see, nice looking thing. And now with a decent bridge, it's a bit of weight in the body, a bit of weight taken off that end, fret leveling, setup, new strings, all good and ready to play. A bit of a polish up and a bit more weight tucked into the body here to make it play. Right, thanks for watching, see you in a minute.